Okay, everybody. All right, all right, all right. Before we start this video, I just want to ask you two things. One, have you drank enough water today? And two, have you done any stretching today? And if you have answered no to either of those questions, or both of them, please do that while watching this video because your health is important to me and I care about you, friend, all right? That's asking as a friend, and I'm telling you should do that while you watch this. You can multitask. This song is VG Lo-Fi Nights, and this is the title theme to Metroid, so if you like this song while you're watching this video, go ahead and check that out. I am going to be covering a replay of the finals between my friends Tago and Zank, both very good players and both very deserving to get to the finals. Tago actually beat me last week to get into this finals position. So just want to quickly cover their team. Going to take us over to the replay. We can watch through, start looking at some of those plays, start watching some of those sets. We actually had a lot of people watching it live, and it was really fun to all get in voice chat and talk to each other while watching this, especially because some of us knew some of the sets, so we were like sharing, but it was very cool. But this is Zank's team. It is a very good bulky offense. He's got that Gliscor, Rachi, Megalopunny, and apparently Gliscor is tier 2 in this league, which is kind of crazy. I didn't realize that. Definitely should have scooped that. Incredible value for tier 2. And he got Megalopunny, another one of like great draft mons. Toxapex, just absolutely broken team, super good. And down here we have Tago's team, which is the Waterloo Mianfus. He has a very cool rain team. Sorry, it's on like the very corner of the screen down there. He has a very cool rain team, and Zapdos rain is just like dope this gen because Hurricane, Weather Ball, Thunder, crazy, like almost nothing walls that. It's absolutely absurd. And like some of the few things that it does that do wall it, like he'll run Subtoxic. Like I had Lantern, and he just ran Subtoxic Zapdos, which was a really good bring because like I just couldn't do anything against it. Other scary mons, you know, he's got the Threatening Zero Aura, and Mega Altaria with Dragon Dance, always a threat. And very cool to see it on a rain team as well because it's not something that you typically see with rain. So like he went pretty heavy on rain, but like not completely all in. Like he's got a couple of other threats, but definitely like a lot of water types. And yeah, so as far as matchup goes, I think Zapdos and Mega Altaria definitely a big threat. And over here on this side, I actually just had another league where I won a match versus a rain team, and it was a just mental set of the Subtoxic Protect Earthquake Gliscor. And it's like Gliscor should not be doing this much work against a rain team, but I helped Zank a little bit before the match. He asked me to look over his team, and sure enough, he brought the same Gliscor that I did. And I'm like, against rain teams, like it really shouldn't be good, but it's so good. Lopunny is very obviously threatening as well. Definitely expect to see the Electros because that Zapdos was very threatening. And getting into the matchup, go ahead and look at this. If you're not somebody who does much thinking on matchup screen, I would advise you to definitely start thinking about matchup screen. Look at it. You should have a game plan going into the game, but then once you have your matchup screen in front of you, you should also be thinking then about how do I alter my game plan? Do I stick exactly what I had before, or do I see maybe he doesn't have a certain threat so I can use a certain mon in a different way? But looking at this screen, I knew a little bit about the sets because I was talking to Zank, but this is what you'd expect mostly, like for some of the attacks. You know, it's got like fake out a normal and a fighting type attack. He also has a surprise for later in the game. He's got a Jirachi, and very difficult to tell what a Jirachi set is, but he actually brought a Future Sight, Psychic, Aura-Sphere, Stealth Rock because he wanted to Future Sight on a Ferrothorn, but Tago actually did not bring a Ferrothorn. Then we have Toxapex, Eel. Delmise is actually very cool in this matchup because it resists electric and water, and obviously can do big damage back. And that absolutely mental Gliscor set that I said. Similarly. And Tago. Yeah, Tago brought a really cool Polytoad. He brought the, if you know the Sapsipper Azumarill set that whirlpools and perish songs. So he brought that same thing, but Polytoad, which I really like. I think on rain teams that have a Polytoad in newer generations, if you want to get something out of your Polytoad, I think a lot of times Whirlpool, Rest, Perish Song is one of the better sets. Sweeper, Seismitoad, a Sweeper kind of like a Roost Zapdos with some nice attacks. I think it's Weather Ball Thunder, but it could be Weather Ball Hurricane. And he'll reveal later that he has a substitute. And we see Mega Altaria, Dragon Dance. And then Zera is obviously very difficult for Zank's team to deal with. But with this caveat. So if Zeraora can knock off a Gliscor Toxic Orb before it can get the Toxic off, then it can be very dangerous to the rest of the team. But if the Gliscor can get its Toxic Orb off before that, then it is not too much of a trouble. But without further ado, let's just jump into it. Actually, we'll play at a slow speed so that we can just watch it and talk about it as it's happening. So lead is Rachi versus Zera. So obvious play for Tago is to go for that turn 1 knockoff. I'll actually turn this on really slow. And Zank elects to go for a Future Sight, which I think is a little bit of an interesting play. I don't know if I'd go for Future Sight turn 1, but I think he was just trying to scout out, see maybe Tago thought he was Scarf U-turn or something. So maybe he was playing off that. He elects not to go for Rocks turn 1, but the only real defoggers that he could have are Altaria or Zapdos, but I'm not sure that he would really... I think he'd be struggling to find defog spots on his team, so he could have set up Rocks turn 1. I think that could have pressured the opponent, but he decided to go with Future Sight, and Knockoff is obviously good play for Tago. And I really like how Tago plays. He just spams Knockoff at the start here. I'll actually throw this back on cell. He's just going to be spamming Knockoff because he really doesn't want to let that Gliscor in, and he wants to catch Zank sleeping with a Knockoff on the Gliscor to get away that Toxic Orb. And this is where that Future Sight actually really helps because the Fake Out brings that down low. And now Zank has to respect the threat of a faster close combat killing his Lopunny. So he must switch out. And Tago, knowing that, makes a really, really good play and goes for another knockoff. And it's really good that Zank played smart, not going to the Gliscor. I think off the bat, they're both making very smart plays. I think Tago keeping up the knockoff pressure is really good because he's getting rid of items, and if he can catch that Gliscor, that's going to be a huge help for later in the game. Going Electros is tough, but what do you switch in here? If you go Toxapex, he's just going to Plasma Fist you, and that's really rough. It's a lot of mind games, and Electros, I guess, is just his lose item of choice, but that's going to definitely make the Zapdos scarier in the future. And Zera being, or Tago being very smart, goes for a knockoff again. And although that play did not work out for him, I think it was smart, again, trying to catch the Gliscor. So I think that's good play from Tago in the beginning, and this Zera, usually you wouldn't want to sack a Zera like this early in a game, but because there is no hidden power, and Zank has this Gliscor, the Zero was never really going to be able to get it going in this game. So just by using this Zero to chip his team right from the get-go before the Gliscor could get the Toxic Orb off, I think was actually a really good game plan by Tago, and it definitely puts Zank on the back foot for this early game. So I actually really like the way that he's playing here. Now we see Pingu. I actually like naming things Pingu as well. The Mega Altaria, and he goes right for a Dragon Dance as Electros reveals Super Fang because he was a what's it called set? A Assault Vest set. And that is going to be very threatening because Mega Altaria is basically guaranteed to kill here, because even if Toxapex comes in, he has Earthquake, but Toxapex being very bulky is helpful because it can live one, and he actually goes for Poison Jab, which does not kill the Altaria, unfortunately for Zank. And so this, again, puts Zank in a really tough spot, and this is really good early game pressure from Tago. I can see keeping the Mega Altaria for later in the game, because I definitely think that if you were able to pressure down the Toxapex with something else on your team, like if you had an SD Explosion Quillfish, that could definitely get rid of this Toxapex, and then a late game Altaria could sweep. But breaking holes in the team early is also really really good. I personally would have probably saved the Altaria for later, but I appreciate his game plan, and that he has a game plan and he's sticking to it. He knows what he wants to do. And I believe this Altaria set is Dragon Dance, Body Slam, Earthquake, and I believe last is Ice Beam to hit Gliscor. So again, this is a tough spot because you got to come out with something and revenge kill this. So you do have Fake Out, but obviously there's the threat of going Zapdos and having Static, or like Quillfish and Intimidate or do something. So Tago makes a smart play, decides to keep the Altaria for possible later sack or something else, and decides to go for Zapdos to try to get the Static off on him. And without return, Lopunny actually has a lot harder of a time breaking Zapdos, unless you have something like Ice Punch and freeze the Zapdos. But like, you're really just playing around with Static there, and that is not a game that you want to play, because Static is probably going to parry you before you ever freeze something. And we don't even know if he has Ice Punch or anything yet. So we see Zapdos actually sets up a substitute there, which is pretty smart play. I think his spread must have made sure that even if he did Ice Punch, he would have 25 left. Or he just had a good read and knew that the Lopunny would want to switch out on it. But if Zank has Ice Punch and uses it and puts it out of sub range, that could be a risky game. So we do see the sub here, and this is actually really good for Tago, and because of this, very smart. He can roost off this next play, and because he roosts and loses flying typing, a Volt Switch will not break his substitute, and that just gives him good initiative. But this gives Zank a free Toxic Orb on his Gliscor, which he really needs, because I suppose it still could be knocked off by something like a Seismitoad, but you can't have any funny business now. You can't get burned somehow. You can't have something else going on, and next turn you'll automatically start getting your Toxic heal. So very useful to have that. And because there's no rain up, Zapdos is actually forced out because Weather Ball is not water type, and he does not necessarily win the PP stall war because he's probably Weather Ball Thunder. I don't know how much PP Weather Ball has, But this is not a pressure Zapdos because he wanted to bring static for the Mega Lopunny, and that is really good for a Toxic Stall Gliscor because the Zapdos does not just waste all of your PPs super fast. So that's really good that it pressures him out, but it lets Politoed in here. And Politoed gets the rain up, and obviously rain is very threatening to Zank's team. So I think smart keeping or smart switching out on let's think about that play for a second. If he didn't switch out and he just stayed in with Zapdos, yeah, I guess so. He doesn't know Zank's set quite yet. So if it was something like a Sword Stance Gliscor, that could be very dangerous. So I do, yes, I think it is a very smart play switching out to Politoed. I do think that was a good play. That was the right play. And it's just kind of a bad place to be that Gliscor gets a sub up because that's super annoying and can Toxic this Politoed. But this is where he reveals Perish Song. And Perish Song is great because I think they both watched my match where a Gliscor almost like soloed. Gliscor like 5v1'd a Rain team with this set. And I think Tago had extremely good prep bringing the Perish Song because it forces Gliscor out, and having the rest, well, like typically you would assume that a Perish Song Politoed would have rest. So having this rest Perish Song Politoed really stops Gliscor from doing what it wants to do. That is good play from good prep and good play from Tago, from both players there, honestly. I think they're both playing throughout the entire game. I think they both played really well. So we see Gliscor throughout an Earthquake there. I think the right play was definitely to Toxic in my eyes, because if something like Altaria came in, you would be faster than it to Earthquake it next time anyway. If Seismitoad came out, you could still sub-protect or whatever. But what was really useful about that play is it catches Zapdos on the switch in. So then you'd have a Toxic Zapdos. And because of that, because of missing that Toxic, or because of not getting the Toxic off on the Zapdos, this could be a very scary Zapdos for it, especially now because you're going to be forced out due to Perish Song, and the threat of Weather Ball is very real. Like, this Zapdos could absolutely run through this team with well, we already see Subroost, and then you have to assume the last is, it's either got to be Weather Ball, Hurricane, or Thunder, right? So probably two of those. So Zapdos comes in here. But what we actually see is that this Gliscor is faster than the Zapdos. So he ends up getting the Toxic off anyway. So that point is kind of moot on the Toxicking. But yeah, that actually like saved Zank's butt, because without that, like, this Zapdos probably could have just ran through the rest of the team if it wasn't Toxic and on that timer. And because this Electros lost the Assault Vest earlier in the game to the Zero Aura, we see just 57 from Weather Ball. Like, you cannot switch into that. And we actually see a Roost here on a good play from Zank going for a Super Fang. Tago probably wanted to try to catch Zank slipping and going for a Volt Switch again. And thought that, like, he could have the sub not be broken and then have a sub, have a healthy Zapdos, and be able to hit something that's coming in. But going for a Super Fang to break the sub was smart. And we see Weather Ball just come out here to kill the Electros, trying to take advantage of the last two Rain turns. And now that Toxic is racking up, it's going to be 31% next turn. That is dangerous. So this is an interesting play. I'll go back and play here. So this Zapdos kills the Electros. So we have a free switch in. He goes into Gliscor. So we have a Gliscor facing down a Zapdos with a single turn left of Rain. So, and there's also Toxic wrapping up. So what ends up happening is that both of these players make a mid-ground play and switch out, and I think it was smart from both of them. Tago, the one with the Zapdos, has a Zapdos that's about to take like 31 from Toxic. And he's looking at a Gliscor that probably has Protect in its last slot, and it's faster and can set up a substitute. So what he elects to do is switch from Zapdos into the Quillfish, because that will let him get an Intimidate off before the substitute goes up. It lets it reset the Toxic timer on the Zapdos. And if Zank just elects to go for a Protect, then he doesn't even have a sub up and can go back into Politoed, Perish Song, and then rest, and that will be good for him. And then what we see from Zank here is a Delmise, because he wants to catch a potential switch into something. I don't know exactly what he was thinking. Oh, I guess he was thinking that Tago might switch into the Politoed, or if he decides to make the risky play and take the Toxic damage to try to catch Zank sleeping and not clicking Protect, then he would click Weather Ball, and Zank decided Weather Ball would probably not do too much damage to this Delmise. So what we see is a double switch out. So that's actually a really interesting play, given it's the last turn of Rain. Just a funny dynamic. So we see the Jirachi come back out here on an Assurance, which is really cool from Tago. The idea is that if Jirachi switches in on a Spike, or if it switches in on a Stealth Rock and takes that damage and then takes the Assurance damage will be doubled. But the Jirachi has enough bulk to live that with 13%, and this puts a lot of pressure on Tago to possibly sack something or take big damage on something. His Zapdos is kind of low, and he just elects to sack off the Altaria, as I think he should. I think that was a good play. The Altaria was kind of low and slower than a lot of the things on his team. So this is an interesting play. Zapdos comes back out. The Jirachi probably outsped it, judging by the fact that the Gliscor outsped it, depending on the Jirachi set, if it was fast enough. But that also means that this Zapdos is probably very bulky. So he could have gone for a Psychic plus the Toxic damage if he expected him to Roost. But he actually elects to go into the Lopunny, which I find interesting, because he could have gone into Gliscor now that this is Toxic, and there's no weather up, there's no rain, so Gliscor is actually a pretty clean check to that. And the Zapdos goes for a Roost, so I'm not sure about the Lopunny play here, but I suppose it was an option that he made, and it didn't go too bad for him. And we see Healing Wish come out, which is crazy. So I guess this is why he decided to risk the Zapdos, because he wanted to set up a Healing Wish. And that's wild, because now this Jirachi's out. He didn't bring the Ferrothorn, so there's nothing that Jirachi really has to break through. Like a Psychic will just do really big damage to anything. The Politoed is toxic, but it's at 94%. But I mean, Psychic will still do a lot to that. Psychic will raw kill this Quillfish. Seismitoad does not want to switch in on a Psychic and then possibly die to a second one, or at least take a lot of damage and then just be super chipped down. Zapdos does not want to, given that it's at 94%. I mean, it's 94%, but it's toxic. So definitely not a good position for Tago to be in right now because there is no weather to take advantage of. So Zank actually ends up making a prediction here that this Quillfish will switch out. And Tago makes a really big cojones play to stay in and go for a Thunder Wave, which is definitely like a threat neutralized kind of spot. But Future Sight is still really going to hurt something else coming in, and this Quillfish is still not hurting the Jirachi too much. We saw the Assurance, but it didn't do too much damage. And now he has a Future Sight up, and he could go for a Psychic. But what he actually elects to do is go for a Stealth Rock. And I thought this was interesting because I'm pretty sure this is Zapdos's Heavy Duty Boots. And I'm pretty sure that Zapdos's Heavy Duty Boots. And Seismitoad resists the rocks. Politoad and Quillfish, I don't know how much the rock chip is really going to do for them. So at the time I was like, this is an interesting play to me. I thought you should have gotten your rocks up at the beginning of the game, or at this point now. But I think towards the end of the game it could possibly make a difference. But now he has this Quillfish living, which is kind of annoying for him. And this Psychic plus a Future Sight will be able to take out that Zapdos, which is good for him. But at what cost? You now have a 44% paralyzed Jirachi, so it's far, far, far less threatening now. So Tago's actually in a pretty rough spot right now because of the toxic on his Politoad, and just not wanting to switch something into a Jirachi. And this is actually a modest 252 Jirachi. You just don't want to switch something into that. It's not the kind of chip you want to take, and Quillfish would just straight up die. So we see him actually double out into Seismitoad, and we see the Jirachi double out into Delmise, which is a very good play to keep the pressure up. If the Politoad scalded, that could be kind of annoying for Zank. But given the fact that he actually switched out into the Seismitoad, this is really good play because it doesn't allow the Seismitoad to pressure through the team and break through everything. Because if Seismitoad got out for free, or even just with the Psychic damage, then he could Earthquake the Jirachi, and he couldn't go Gliscor, and then he'd be forced out into Delmise, and then I guess this would be forced later. But in this turn of events, Zank actually gets to keep the Jirachi as a later sack. So it forces this matchup a little bit earlier, which is good for Jirachi. And we see that he actually was not even risking a burn on Delmise because he's actually a special Delmise. So even if he got the Scald burn, it wouldn't be too bad. And then just makes this absolutely nuts play of going, well, I guess not super nuts because you don't really expect the liquidation on the Gliscor. But since this is Intimidate Quillfish and it's not a super fast one, he can go Gliscor, and Gliscor will outspeed the Quillfish. And this Quillfish goes for Pain Split. So Zank is just making some really good plays to stall out these rain turns. Goes for a Substitute and Protect next turn to just keep his health super high because he's getting all of that HP that he used to make the substitute. He's getting all of it back. Takes like 25% to make. Takes 25% to make the substitute. Then you get 12.5% back that one turn. Then you protect and you get 12.5% back. So it's like you never did anything in the first place. And then at the time, we were all like, this is a crazy play. Why is he earthquaking? Like, doesn't he want to stall out the rain turns? This is such, like, I cannot praise Zank enough for making these plays. This is extremely intelligent and put him in a really, really good position right here. He must have done calcs and known that a liquidation from Quillfish would not kill this Gliscor. And he knows this is a Damp Rock Politoed. So, all right, this next turn. And he knows that Earthquake will kill this Quillfish in 2 turns. So we are at 3 turns of rain left. So we have this liquidation. It does not kill Gliscor. This next Earthquake will kill the Quillfish, but there are 2 turns of rain left. So if you kill the Quillfish with 2 turns of rain left, and then there's 1 turn of rain left the next turn. There's 1 turn of rain. You can't set the rain up with Politoed. You'd have to go into Seismitoad and try to Ice Punch the Gliscor. But all you have to do is protect once, and now you're faster than the Seismitoad again, and you have enough HP for a sub, so then you can just start sub PP stalling the Seismitoad until eventually he decides to go back into the Politoed, and then Politoed's got to take this rock and Toxic Chip anyway. So Tago realizes that. Very smart, realizes that, decides, hey, like, I'm not going to be able to set up my rain, and I want to have this Quillfish as a sack later. So he realizes that's actually a really bad position for him because Zank made a really smart play. If Zank would have just protected and substituted until rain was completely down, then Tago could have sacked the Quillfish, gone Politoed to set up the rain, set up a Perish Song or something, had a better chance, maybe freeze the Delmise with the Seismitoad. And obviously, this did risk a crit killing Gliscor, but that was like a super, super good play to prevent rain from going back up. So really smart play with the rain turns. So now Politoed is out, and there is 1 more turn of rain, and he decides to go for a Protect as the Politoed reveals Rest, which is very smart to keep your Politoed alive. And I get the Protect from Zank not wanting to die to a Scald or something if your Earthquake didn't kill, and then you could try to kill him next turn. But I do feel like having Rest on the set is very obvious. And Tago said something very smart, like when he was prepping for the game. He said, like, Politoed is here to set up the rain. Even if I rest to keep my Politoed healthy and it is sleeping, it can still be sent in to set up the rain again. It's not like Politoed has no use outside of that, but like it can still do its #1 job of setting up the rain even while asleep. So very good bring on his part, very smart train of thought. Now we see a sleeping Politoed versus a Gliscor right here. He decides that he wants to pursue the substitute route and then just start Earthquaking for a chip, I believe. But Earthquake is only doing like 26%, so it is a 4-hit KO versus Politoed. So Politoed is not too worried about that. I think even if he got a crit, it would not matter. He would still be able to rest. Well, given that he Perish Songed, now no, actually a crit still wouldn't kill. He can still rest even if he gets crit this time. So that is going to force the Gliscor out in a couple of turns, and So, I mean, Parasong was just a great bring. And getting this rest up. Now, he still has the Quillfish as a sack, so that he doesn't have to sack the Politoed to Parasong. And Zank decides that because he's going out into his Quillfish, he will go out into his Jirachi. I don't know what exactly his train of thought there was, or maybe he thought that Jirachi would be able to pressure the Politoed more. Not entirely certain. But we see an Assurance come out here and hit Gliscor. Even if he used Liquidation, it would not have killed, especially outside of Rain. So then we see Rain go back up, which is definitely what Tago wants, so that this Seismitoad can have a chance at cleaning the rest of the game. But this full health Dhelmise is just looking super scary. So we see Earthquakes coming out here. And Quillfish coming out as a sack. And Gliscor gets the substitute up, which is very smart because now Seismitoad can outspeed an Ice Punch or a Liquidation to break the sub. But in doing so, he is a Life Orb Seismitoad. So in doing so, the Life Orb would be hurting him a lot. And because the Seismitoad is faster than the Gliscor, he just clicks Protect one turn. He clicks Substitute to rebuild his sub after it gets broken. And it just stalls out the Rain turns, and then eventually he's faster than the Seismitoad. And yeah, it's just like not a great position to be in. So we see Protect there to try to stall out the Rain turns, playing smart. And then we see an Earthquake, which kills this Politoad. And that lets him basically do what I just said, so I'll turn this on normal, where he can Protect, stall out the Rain turns. You see Liquidation come out here. Now he just sets up a sub because Seismitoad is faster. Next turn he can Protect again. Even if Seismitoad was something like Substitute, he could still do this until the Rain ran out. Toxic's on the last turn of Rain because he will be faster. And that's basically the rest of the game. Yeah, Tago just concedes and sets up his Stealth Rock. So I think really just all around well played by both players. I think one of the biggest issues for Tago was that his Zapdos was outsped by the Gliscor and got Toxic. That put so much pressure on him. And that made it very difficult for him in the long game. And actually, those Stealth Rocks that Zank ended up sending up late in the game actually did make a difference because it helped chip down the Politoad every time it came back in, and it let Gliscor get that Earthquake kill. Dhelmise probably still could have pulled through and won the game, but it doesn't risk quite as much because Dhelmise could get like frozen with Ice Punch or something. But really just well-deserved finals by both of these players. And funny fact, so Zank is the Shy Scythers, and so Shy Scythers have won ISL Season 3 that we just had. And actually, I took over his team in ISL Season 2, and then I went undefeated with it and won ISL Season 2 while piloting the Shy Scythers. So the Shy Scythers are back-to-back ISL champions. So basically, me and Zank have... well, I didn't even know Zank at the time that I took over his team, but we've accidentally teamed up to bring 2 victories to the Shy Scythers. So there's your fun fact of the day. Hope you all have a beautiful day. Hope you actually drank water and stretched throughout this video. And I'll catch you all next time. Peace.